We are broadcasting.
Thank you very much. Time is now 6:36. This is the City Council Budget Work Session. I believe we're on number 8 or 9. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Gore.
Here.
Vice Mayor Bennett. Counselor Randolph.
Here.
Counselor Holloway.
Here.
Counselor Parton.
Here.
Counselor Denton.
Here.
Counselor Pelham.
Here.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Bennett may have to step in and out because she's dealing with the family situation at this time. And then Counselor Parton did notify us by in a message that he may have to leave at 7 o'clock and will join back later on if he can. So we're going to begin our special meeting this evening. We have SB1, Real Estate Tax Deadline Extension Resolution. Just as a reminder for council to tee up both of these items, SB1 and SB2. I want to thank the majority of council that supported adding this to our meeting on Tuesday to discuss. Unfortunately, we did not get to these items. So I asked the manager if he wouldn't mind adding this to the budget work session for us to deal with tonight because of the deadline that we have looming to be able to pass this in order for people to take advantage of this relief due to COVID-19 and to help residents and businesses right now. So hopefully council will support both of these measures and take action on them tonight. And without further ado, I'll pass it over to Mr. Altman to and Ms. Robinson to recap the drafts that we have in the packet for discussion tonight.
I have my hand up.
Yes.
I'd like to know if I can make an amendment to the agenda as well to add the unfinished business with the letter to the AG requesting that in support of the special prosecutor to bring something to fruition on the DeCarlo case.
So you're trying to add back the other item that we added on Tuesday we didn't get to?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
This
is a special meeting. I think we need to have unanimous consent to add something. Let me double check with Ms. Robinson. Ms. Robinson, is that accurate? We would need to have 7 votes.
If it was not in the special meeting notice, yes.
Okay. And I just got a message from Vice Mayor Bennett that she is going to be getting off the line and just now looking at the participants. I don't see her name present. So we wouldn't be able to pass that to add to this agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you for trying. Councilor Randolph?
I think it's already taken care of. I was just going to say, I think that the city attorney indicated what, was could be added for special and what should stay on regular meeting, if I'm not mistaken. So I think it's already been taken care of.
What do you mean it's been taken care of?
I think you just said that it couldn't be added, right?
Oh, it couldn't be added because we don't have 7 counselors here to vote on it. Yeah, okay.
Right. It's
Okay.
already, it's a moot issue right now.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Counselor Palm, you have your hand back raised, or is that the same one?
Same one.
Okay. So Mr. Altman and Ms. Robinson, can you discuss the draft resolutions that we have before us today for the COVID-19 relief for residents and all taxpayers?
I thought SB1 is tax. Yeah, okay.
So yeah, SB1, Mr. Altman.
So, Madam Mayor, members of council, SB1 is a resolution that extends the deadline for the payment of real estate taxes from June 15th to June 30th. We are enacting it as a result of our COVID-19 related situation that we're in now, in an effort to provide our citizens a little bit more time to get their real estate taxes paid. The resolution. It was in your packet this evening. Ms. Robinson prepared the resolution. I think it's pretty straightforward. Council had voted to direct us at the May 26th meeting that you wanted to take this action. And since we didn't get to have an opportunity on Tuesday night to take action, and knowing that time is of the essence, given that the 15th is Monday, we need to take action tonight in order to facilitate the extension of that deadline before the 15th deadline while it's looming. Any questions? Be happy to answer them. Ms. Robinson, if you have anything to add, please feel free.
It's just two things, Madam Mayor, members of council, and Mr. City Manager. As you know, the code requires that the motion that the council passed on May 26th to be reduced to a resolution. That is the reason for the delay in the effective date. But I'd also like to direct your attention down to the bottom of the first page. This was prepared with the anticipation that council would adopt it on June 9. I have just sent the clerk a corrected copy of the resolution indicating the June 11 date. And so that one change has been made since this was forwarded to you for your packet. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Ms. Robinson. Thank you for getting this drafted so quickly for us to be able to take action on it. I appreciate that. Councilor Denton?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the resolution extending the due date for the payment of the real estate taxes from June the 15th to June the 30th, 2020.
Second.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilor Denton and seconded by Mayor Gore. It's up for discussion at this time. For those joining us, I see Councilor Denton, your hand is still raised. I know it's the last, you're fine, you're fine. Anybody
ma'am.
else has anything to add to this that's joining us by phone?
No, I'm good.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mayor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Randolph,
Yes.
Counselor Holloway,
Yes.
Counselor Parton,
Yes.
Counselor Denton,
Yes,
Counselor Pelham.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Motion passes. Thank you for everyone for voting for that to get that done. The next item that we have to finish the relief for taxpayers is the COVID-19 taxpayer relief ordinance. And this is in regards to the utilities. I'll lend the floor to Mr. Altman, but definitely think that Ms. Robinson should chime in on this to make sure that council has had a time to review it, because our packet this evening, a couple hours ago, to make sure everyone is on the same page because of the discussion that we had when this was first on the agenda, to make sure it is intended to be what council discussed. So Mr. Altman.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Mayor. Again, this was an item that we did not have an opportunity to discuss on the 9th. So I'm sure that the city attorney will have the same amendment for the adoption date of the 11th that she did for the previous resolution. Council discussed this at your May 26th meeting, directing staff and the attorney to prepare an ordinance to address the city utility, the waiving or the of penalty and interest for late payments of our utilities, and those bills would be the bill that we send out, which has sanitary, sewer, stormwater, solid waste, or refuse on. So you would have no penalty or interest for late payments of those between now, July 1 and September 30th. And then additionally, there was a discussion regarding other local taxes except for meals and M&T. And if we wanted to itemize those taxes out, you would have your transient or lodging tax that you could look at that would be included there. A question would be that right now, are you interested in extending if people were to pay their real estate tax late would be a question for council. Those taxes obviously now are due on June 30th. But if they're paid late, are you looking to extend the same opportunity to the individuals that do that? Personal property taxes aren't due until February, so those are not would not really be applicable at this point in time. So we're limiting what we're talking about to really the transient lodging tax that you would have the ability, because we impose an 8% lodging tax in the city, and looking at that question with regard to the real estate payment. And I'll let Mrs. Robinson provide an
Madam Mayor, may I just ask Mr. City Manager, Mr. Altman to repeat what he just said? I didn't hear the last part.
Ms. Robinson, your phone is echoing. Can you adjust a little bit and then restate what you shared, please?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I did not hear the last part of what the city manager, Mr. Altman, just said. So if he can just sort of repeat what he was handing this over to me to do, I'd appreciate it.
I was just indicating that the discussion was, they had a discussion of all local taxes with the exception of meals and machinery and tools. And we need a little clarification. So right now, the only local tax that would be in question would be our transient occupancy or our lodging tax.
Mm-hmm.
And the real estate tax, if someone were to pay that late. Now that if they wanted to extend the zero penalty and interest rate on any real estate taxes paid late, and that personal property, which are due in February, wouldn't really be affected by this at this point in time. And then hand it off to you and noting that we would change the 9th, the effective date of the inaction on the 9th to the 11th to mirror what we did on the real estate resolution earlier.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes, Madam Mayor, members of council, as with the resolution, a modification has been made and will be sent to the clerk relative to the date of adoption for this ordinance if we in fact act tonight. As to the form, it was required by the code. That's why there was a delay in the effective date from the date council expressed its interest in wanting to basically eliminate the imposition of any late fee, penalty, and interest on certain taxes and utility fees. Relative to SB2, as the motion was first discussed back on May 26, it was broadly discussed as local taxes. As the discussion progressed, the discussion and the identification was more defined, but primarily to those taxes that were not being included. And those were, as I understood, meals tax and the machinery and tools tax. The suggestion that the specific taxes be specified in the ordinance has been made in the interim, I think is a very good suggestion. And so it really, at this point, requires council to just fully identify on the record those other local taxes that it intended to be covered by the relief granted by SB2. Alternatively, if you leave it as all local taxes without that sort of delineation of what is included, it will be left to staff to determine where it applies in terms of local taxes. And then, of course, if taxes don't fall due in the period that is provided, then those things would be inapplicable. So it really is up to council at this point to just walk through those specific other local taxes that it intended to be covered by the general motion, all local taxes.
Thank you very much, Ms. Robinson. Counselor Denton?
I was gonna ask that. I think, if we need to itemize the local taxes that will be affected by this.
Yes, ma'am, and we'll do that tonight. Yep, any other comments at this time before we try to work on that?
No, I think we need that before we can make a motion, so.
Correct. I'm just asking, do you have any, start that process? Okay, Counselor Randolph?
Yes, ma'am. I talked to both the city manager and the attorney this afternoon because I too felt like this was too vague for our staff and for the citizens and for us to relay to the citizens. I am okay with the lodging tax being having the same July through September and real estate, but I'm looking for Mr. Altman to tell us the impact, if anything, that would be different for those two with what we've already approved to have a waiver of penalty and interest. Mr. Altman, could you tell us how real estate tax waiver for 3 months would potentially impact us before we vote on this?
Yes, ma'am. As many on council know in the community, we are in the midst of our first half of real estate tax collection in this month, which was due by June 15th, now the 30th. We use those funds to start our new budget in FY 21 on July 1. So delay in payment of those would have some impact potentially on the beginning of the year with collections. So that would be a little bit of a concern with real estate, depending upon how many people decided, well, if I'm not going to have a penalty, I'll just wait until September to pay. As far as lodging, that wouldn't necessarily have as much because they're paying monthly their lodging fees. So we would be just might want to set, as some communities have, a date by which they would want to pay in full. So if we're going through September, then we may say that they need to be paid in full by September 30th.
So with everything that we have passed so far, is this the only one, lodging tax is the only one that would impact businesses?
So far, yeah. Well, our businesses do pay the utility tax, which is the stormwater, solid waste. They do have fees involved there. So those would benefit businesses also. But that was one way of looking at that, was to benefit our residents. In addition to some communities have just looked at lodging, which obviously is a business benefit, but minimal benefit to the residents. So the utility piece would also benefit our residents.
Okay, but you're saying on the lodging, also include in there, if we include lodging, a date where they have to have the 3 months if they haven't paid it, when they have to have it done?
Yeah, I would recommend that if you're gonna do that, and I apologize, and just thought about this within the last couple of hours as we were getting ready for the meeting and looking over some information, that you may want to have a date to which all payments are to be made full by. So this isn't just lingering on at some point, because we have to be able to say.
They would get charged a fee every month that they haven't paid in full, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, if they go through September 30th without paying any lodging taxes for 3 months, then in October, they're going to get their regular bill. And then I don't know, when is lodging tax charged? First of the month or last of the month? Last of the month for the prior month?
Yes.
Okay, so they wouldn't get a fee for October 1st, but by November 1st, they would get a fee if they hadn't paid for each month that they're behind, correct?
If you want to, if they haven't paid, if you want to, yeah, we can make it So what you're saying is the interest continues to accrue, but if you pay it within by the 30th, it's waived. If not, then you're going to pay the amount plus all the interest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't
Just
that how
wanted,
you all I mean, I don't know how y'all normally bill, but that would seem,
no, that seems, but that seems appropriate. And then with that, then I don't know that you need that end date number in there that you're just going to get hit with all that penalty and interest.
right.
Yep.
And I would think that's how we would do it, but
Mhm.
I would have to, that's why I'm asking. That makes sense to me because then each month you're getting hit with more penalty and interest, and it's going to accrue fairly quickly for 3 months that you haven't paid.
Right.
So just my thought. Thank you, ma'am. I'm done.
Okay, Counselor, Ms. Robinson has her hand raised. Let the city attorney speak first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In the past, I've kind of been a little bit concerned about the use of the term waiver, and I want to sort of raise that again.
Mhm.
Here, the ordinance as it's been prepared does not incorporate that terminology because it does have a specific meaning in law. What we've done by this ordinance is simply said we've set a rate of 0
Okay.
for the interest, penalty, and late fee. And it is a fine point, but it matters a little bit, especially when you're talking about now the transient occupancy fee. Is that what your lodging fee is, Mr. Altman?
Yes, ma'am.
Because that is a trust tax as well. It's just like your meals tax. And so, whatever concerns that we've already discussed relative to waiving fees and interest related to meals tax, that discussion can be equally applied
Okay.
to the lodging tax. Now, because we're setting a rate of 0, which could have been done at the onset, it becomes less of a legal concern for me. And so that's really kind of the reason I just want us to sort of back away from the term waiver. Similarly, because we're setting a rate of 0 and you want to now specify the lodging tax, I think in terms of classification, at that point, the meals tax would kind of roll into that as well. If we're setting a rate of 0 for that defined period of time, and it would only be for those taxes that are collected in this defined period of time. Does that make sense?
No.
Well, I just the lodging tax is a trust tax, and there are issues around the waivers, discussion of waiving anything around those. But for the purpose of just setting a rate of 0, if you're going to do it for the lodging, you can do it for the meals. It's basically the sum of my point. If the intent is not to do that, for meals, and our rationale is we're not doing it for meals because it is a trust tax, we are now treating two trust taxes differently. And so I urge you to not do that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson.
Thank you.
Counselor Pelham, and then after that, I have something for the first round, and then I'll check on Counselor Parton and Counselor Holloway. Then we'll do the second round. Counselor Pelham.
If it's a trust tax, why don't we just take it out altogether?
Quick.
That's what she said.
Excuse me.
Well, go ahead, let Mr. Pardon go since he's leaving early. Go, I wave to him if you don't mind. Yield
Okay,
to
that's fine. Okay, Ms. Parton.
All that I was just going to say is make sure that we just treat all the trust taxes fairly. That was really the only comment that I had, and just wanted to be excused so I can go finish with the testing site and taking stuff down.
Okay.
Thank you, Council Parton. You are excused. Madam Clerk, can you note 7 p.m. Council Parton was excused from the meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. And actually, Council Palmer, you,
I was saying the same thing, basically, if lodge or whatever, if it's a trust tax, we can't do it. To me, it is not in accordance with the statute, so just drop it and leave those those areas that we can do for the citizens. Other than that, it is, we can't do it. Simple. But the other thing is I wanted to say, I wasn't talking about that, is that when we talk about how if we can make it to the end of the year without getting the monies up front, or people waiting to September to pay, why don't we, and Mr. Altman, have you spoken with the treasurer to see how much money has come in and compare that to the money that has come in, how long that would last for June, July, and August? Those are the type of answers that we need as well. Look at what's come in for our expenditures last year for June, July, and August, and then comparatively know that actually we need that information before we pass this act. So that's my comment. Have you spoken to her?
I have not spoken to the treasurer regarding where she is with collections at this point in time with real estate.
Yeah, but that's important, right? I mean, we got to know that.
Well, that's why my recommendation would be not to extend that to real estate. Just everybody needs to pay their real estate taxes by the 30th.
Okay, well, it sounds like we don't need to vote on this then, to me. Unfortunately, because you have to know what she's brought in thus far. You have to know how that's going to impact your revenues to cover your expenditures from June, July to September. And we can't answer those questions. I mean, I that's why I called you today to ask that question, but we never got around to talking to each other. So we need to know that. I need to know it anyway. Otherwise, I'm voting no.
Well, I think you could still take action, and if you wanted to extend the 0 rate of penalty and interest for your utilities, the sanitary, stormwater, and solid waste fee that all gets mailed out in one bill, which is number 1.
That's my comments.
thank you. Before I comment for the first round, I'll check with Councilor Holloway to see if she has anything to share at this time. And I'll be last for this first round.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with the extension of utility taxes for the constituents. That's what I support.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Robinson, you did touch on what I was going to ask about the lodging, is to include the meals because they were both trust tax. Councilor Parton said the same thing as well before you left. In regards to the clarity that you're looking for council in this particular ordinance, are you speaking about the end that I have on the screen regarding number 1 and number 2 to explicitly state in addition to what's on here, more clarity? I just want some understanding in regards to that.
Okay, so in SB 1, we have specified the utilities that are going to be, I guess, the subject utilities that receive the benefit. When you go to SB 2, local taxes and what that is intended to cover is left to speculation, maybe luck, relative to how it's treated by staff. So except with the identification of meals tax and machinery and tools tax is being excluded, every other local tax now is possibly the recipient of the relief that has been granted. And based on your conversation so far tonight, now we know that the lodging tax would be also included among those taxes that are excluded from this relief. So the specificity at SB2 is needed it was again suggested, as Councilor Randolph said, at her urging, and I thought it was an excellent idea. But I guess you all have to decide which ones you want to include. And because I was not here on the May 26th meeting, I had nothing to go on other than what I could just kind of make out from the discussion. And there might actually be a vote to include real estate taxes depending on the information that is provided. So I think we just need to have a better understanding there. SB2, not necessarily at this point SB1.
Okay,
have-
so, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I hope that answers the question.
Yes, so Mr. Altman, I have my notes from the 26th meeting in regards to what I thought we meant by local taxes, but I understand it's not clear because Robson wasn't here, and it honestly isn't clear because we had so many different comments during that night. So when you work with her on this, what were you anticipating when we included local taxes so that the public and council can know a baseline to talk about from?
Well, at one point in the discussion, it was just referred to as all trust taxes.
Hmm.
And then at one other point, it was all local taxes. So it wasn't specifically, at one point, we did talk about naming off some of them. We named off, and early in before there was a motion on the floor, there was a discussion of, well, what about real estate or B-pole or sales or lodging? And then we had the whole discussion, and Mr. Gore brought up the state code onto the screen, and we had that whole discussion. And then it became looking at penalty and interest for all, quote, trust taxes, city utilities, extending the deadline on real estate. And then there was a friendly amendment with regard to reducing the time from July to December, from July to September. And then it was, then we had another a motion made that was an ordinance to waive or to address penalty and interest for taxes, for all taxes. So it wasn't really clear from my notes in the discussion as to if we actually settled on which ones we were going to do based on the different iterations of the motions that were made that night.
Okay, so thank you for that. Maybe my question wasn't clear. As it's written now, when we say local taxes, what are you interpreting that as? That's what I meant to ask you.
Oh, okay.
It's okay.
When I look at local taxes, so I just went to the city code and began to look at what taxes we impose from a local perspective. And we impose real estate, M&T. We do have a 6% meals tax. We have 1% of sales sales tax imposed locally that goes to the general fund, and our lodging transient and our lodging tax at 8%. So looking at those items was when I was thinking, well, if we're talking about local taxes, this is what would be in our realm of what we're imposing. But with the discussion of the trust taxes, we take out meals and lodging. And I think Ms. Robinson, correct me if I'm wrong, sales is more of a trust tax also, because it's a pass-through tax that's collected by the purveyor and provided to us. You kind of land on real estate and machinery and tools, and we already had the discussion. I remember the discussion on the 26th of excluding machinery and tools. Mm-hmm. So you kind of settle in, if we're not going to look at real estate, then we're settling in on number one, which addresses the utility fees and providing a zero penalty or interest rate for those. So I think tonight we probably have talked through elimination of the majority of those locally imposed taxes this evening.
Okay, so I'm on the same page as you slightly. Only the part the only part that we differ is not differ in terms of not agreeing, but on my notes, I remember on my notes, I have written down that we eliminated machinery and tools and B-pole, and we did not discuss extending this to real estate, not because we said no, because we just never talked about it. Mm-hmm. But we did say utility fees, lodging, sales, and meals. Right. And that's what I have in my notes from that evening, was to do this for utility fees, lodging, sales, and meals And then I have a note off to the side where Mr. Gore pulled up the state code to verify, because I said I didn't think that we could do that for meals. But then the way he interpreted the section he had pulled up, I think he shared it was fine. So that's when we voted to include those 4 items.
Right.
And so that's what I have in my notes, but that's why I'm going to do another rundown to make sure everyone's on the same page. So when we say local taxes, if everyone can pull out a paper or something to keep track of, we're talking about lodging, sales, meals, real estate, M&T, and B poll, those 6 items. And so we just need to narrow down which ones we want to keep and remove. And I know it was clear that we said no to M&T and B poll. So we're looking at the top 4, which is just lodging, sales, meals, and real estate. Are you tracking with me, Mr. Altman?
Yep, I got my list.
Okay, so we can start trying to narrow down there. And I did send a message to figure out if we could see if the treasurer was available, if she was available, if she could join us for this discussion. So I need to, if council's agreeable to that, I'd like to see if she's available. She can join us.
Sorry.
I would just rather leave it out and just go on and do the utilities tax tonight.
So I'm asking about the treasurer joining us. Does
No,
anyone have any objections to that?
I do.
Okay, does anyone else have any objections to that?
Yeah, because I have my hand raised. I don't know.
I see your hand raised, but I still have the floor. That's why I didn't call on you. I'm just asking this.
All right, I would just say let's eliminate number 2.
So my question that I was asking is, does anyone object to having the treasurer contact to see if she can join us right now?
Well, if we eliminate number 2, we won't need her. 'Cause
So
we're
your
not
answer
gonna have
is-
anything. No,
So your answer is yes, you object to her coming, correct?
pardon me?
I'm asking, does anyone object to seeing if she's available to join us? And if, based off of your response, I'm writing it down as a yes.
I don't see any need of it if we are going, we're not going to, I don't think we can do the real estate, and we can't do the lodging, we can't do meals and tax machines of any of those. So I'm just saying, it looks like we need to eliminate number 2 and go with number 1, which is the utilities tax.
Okay, so I'll move on from this because I just asked one question regarding that. So I'll write you down as a no still for asking the treasurer to join us. It doesn't seem like there's an overwhelming majority to see she's available, so I'll let that go.
Well, you haven't asked everybody yet.
I know I was trying to. Councilor Pelham, do you object?
If she has the information, yes, she needs to be here. How can you
That's
make it?
my concern. I don't think she's going to be able to have enough information.
know.
I said
Don't
we
think
can
so.
see if she's see if, please, everybody, I'm just asking to see if there's a consensus to see if she's available. So just polling. So Councilor Pelham, is your answer yes?
Yes.
Councilor Holloway, is your answer yes or no?
Yes, we need clarification.
Okay, so Mr. Altman, can you try to reach out to her really quickly to see if she's available and just message me to let me know and I can let council know. And the last question I have while I have the floor is Ms. Robinson, when I spoke with you regarding the meals tax early on and you explained the purpose of it being a trust tax, you pulled up a different code than what Mr. Gore had on the screen, which had conditions about extending it but not waiving it. Do you have that code section available so council can have a clear understanding about what is possible regarding this, so we can make a decision ultimately based off of the code that you referenced when we spoke?
Right, I don't have, I can go through my notes and provide you the code section. I do recall the code section that Mr. Gore relied on in his presentation, and it was 58.1-3916. And I believe, first of all, that is directly applicable to the extension of the due date, but he was also looking to the language in 3916 to opine generally that if council establishes tax, it can waive the tax and interest and things of that nature. And that's just his opinion based on what's there. That is not expressly laid out. And as the General Assembly has stated, and it has been interpreted by courts, a locality's taxing authority is fairly narrow, and it is expressly given. There isn't much room for any implicit acts related to taxing or granting exemptions relative to those taxes. And so everything is very narrowly construed. Because of that, those opinions, which have been, in my view, reaffirmed regularly by the Virginia Supreme Court, I have not broadly interpreted 3916 to include waivers once the underlying penalty or tax has been imposed by operation of law. What we've done here in this emergency ordinance, really between SB1 and SB2, is we've said we are establishing these. It's almost as if it's never happened before. We are establishing these rates to be zero for this time frame. And if you would extend this back in time, had we at the very beginning, when we adopted our various local ordinances, we could have said there will never be any late fee, there will never be any interest or penalties. We could have left those things out. And had we left those things out, we could not charge them. So the way it's stated here saves the day for me. And so the analysis that was applied before, when the terminology that was used was waiving taxes, waiving interest, waiving penalties, it has a totally different meaning. And that's why earlier in our discussion tonight, I asked that we just kind of, sort of tamp back on utilizing that term, simply because in some ways how I'm wired to deal with that. But I'm happy to share other provisions, and it's going to be interpretation as well. But I just don't broadly construe taxing authority based on how Virginia law has been interpreted and enforced by the Virginia Supreme Court.
So this is just a way to not waive, because that is improper, but to provide some relief for a definite time frame by imposing a tax of zero until September 30th.
Right. Like
Okay.
by example, you could just say we're going to repeal our meals tax for the next 6 months. There's nothing that says you have to have a meals tax, so that's absolutely proper.
Thank you.
So in the context of this ordinance, you're saying we are setting rates of zero. So I'm okay with the wording, and I believe that was utilized by Councilor Parton's motion when he said just eliminate it. That seemed to be a very good way of dealing with those issues, as opposed to talking about them in the context of the term waiver.
Thank you for that clarification for everyone. I appreciate that. Councilor Pelham, Councilor Randolph, and then Councilor Denton. Councilor Pelham, your line is still muted, and the clerk is available to join for
Then
council.
I would say, to make a viable decision, how can you make a decision not knowing what the revenues that already have come in, to compare them with your normal expenditures from last year, at least on average of the last 3 years for July, August, and September? If you can do okay, we don't have to vote on this ordinance. And the revenue she's already brought in, the citizens have already sent in, and she's collected, all this is mute. The end.
Counselor Pelham, were you still speaking?
I said the end.
And,
Okay.
okay,
you.
thank you, Ms. Pelham. I was just gonna suggest to move on to simply do the utilities tax tonight. We've all agreed on it. We all still agree on it. We've got a meeting Tuesday night that if we still want to address real estate and we can't get a hold of the treasurer, maybe we can tomorrow or Monday and get those figures and everything we need to make an informed vote. I think trying to push her onto here right tonight
Just cut off.
is kind of, last minute. I just think that if we're going to make an informed decision, like Ms. Pelham said, we need to do it with what we have tonight. And if we change our mind and do something on Tuesday, it's 4 days that we changed it. So why don't we do it with just just making a motion? Well, I'd like to make a motion to go ahead with SB2 for council to approve this motion with the utilities tax waiver of penalty and interest, and that's it.
Motion
Yeah.
dies.
Did you hear me?
Yeah, and I said motion dies for lack of a second. We paused for.
You didn't ask for a second. We didn't know if you were even there.
I don't
Me-
always ask for a second. Most people just blurt out
I
second
can't-
whenever they want to. That's the
I
process.
cannot hear you.
Want me to ask for a second, I can, but that's not normally done. Counselor Denton, you have something trying
Please
to.
ask for a second.
Counselor Denton, you had a question?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't hear, I did not hear you at all during all of that. The motion that Councilor Randolph made, I think I would
We're
like
waiting for a second.
okay, then I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we approve authorizing and providing relief from the imposition of late fees and interest on the utility taxes to include sanitary sewer, stormwater, and solid waste refuse, and the amount will be zero. We don't waiver the penalty and interest will be zero.
I'll second that. Motion is made by Counselor Denton, it's been seconded by Mayor Gore. I just want to check on something. Mr. Altman, you're registered twice in there. Is that you both times or is that Mr. Gossier?
Oh my God.
Oh, I do need to add to that. If you will allow me to add to that motion.
Yes, ma'am. Let me just clarify who else is logged in on here. We have two of the same registrations. I want to make sure it's meant to be that way before we move on. Mr. Altman, is that you dialed in twice? Okay, he can't hear anymore, so he's gonna have to drop off the line. I think he's trying to work out a technical issue. All right, go ahead, Counselor Denton.
In my motion, I designated what utility taxes, but I failed to put the period of time. And that would be between July the 1st, 2020 and September the 30th, 2020, due to the emergency conditions resulting from COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay, I accept that as well. Madam Clerk, do you have that on the record while we wait for Mr. Altman to join in? And then after you clarify what the motion is, I'll call on Ms. Robinson because she has her hand raised as well.
Are you recognizing me, Mayor Gore?
Yes, ma'am, that's fine.
This is more to Counselor Denton and the counselor who seconded her motion. I didn't hear the language that you moved to adopt the ordinance
That's correct.
to the
I said approve rather than adopt, but I'll say adopt the
yeah,
I'll
and
say-
and mention the word ordinance. I just didn't hear that, just so
Yeah,
we know it's
okay.
clear that we're adopting an ordinance in this process.
Okay, I just said approve, so I'll say to adopt the emergency ordinance
Thank you.
authorizing us,
Th-
what I said, the,
Okay, that's,
you want me to repeat this whole thing?
no, Counselor Denton, that's clear. and
It's
I-
perfect. Thank
Okay,
you.
all right,
Thank you, Ms. Robertson, for catching that.
Yeah,
Madam Clerk, can you please restate what you have so that way we're all on the same page and make sure Counselor Denton's motion is correct in the second?
do you want me to restate it?
No, ma'am, I want to make sure the clerk has it for the record because it was rather long and I want to make sure it's accurate. So that
You-
the
okay.
record is clear. Mhm. And Ms. Brown, your microphone you're able to unmute it unless you're having an issue like Mr. Altman where you're unable to hear or speak. Let me check.
Madam Mayor, may I speak?
Yes.
Mr. Altman is having technical issues because he has forwarded his invite to Ms. Gazier, and he is logged on twice because of it. So I am having both of them log off and log in with their prospective invitations.
Thank you. And Mr. Altman did message me. I see it. Thank you. I see. Mr. Altman, are you going to log back off or is that the line that you tried again? Okay, Ms. Brown is having technical issues. She can't hear anyone as well. And then I see Vice Mayor Bennett just joined back off. So Madam Attorney, is it okay that we recess for a few minutes to get Mr. Altman and the clerk back into the system?
Yes, ma'am. You can move to recess for any reason.
I move to recess until for 5 minutes, which will be 7:32, so the city manager and the city clerk can get back into the system. They're both having technical issues.
Second,
Okay. Do we need anything else other than the move in the second? Do we need to vote on this, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Can you take the toll because the clerk isn't in the
Sure,
system?
go right ahead.
Okay. For the roll call, Ms. Counselor Randolph,
No.
Counselor Pelham, Counselor Pelham, you're on mute.
Yes, yes,
Counselor Holloway, Counselor Denton,
yes,
Vice Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
Mayor Gore, yes. We have enough votes to recess for 5 minutes to let them fix the technical issues. And I'll call Ms. Brown to let her know we're recessing so she can restart all of her system. We'll be right back.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I've sent to all members of council a revised draft of the ordinance, the emergency ordinance. It should be in your emails. The date on it has been changed to June 11, and SB2 has been deleted, so that the only thing remaining is the reference to the sanitary sewer, stormwater, and solid waste utility payments. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Never mind, never mind. Madam Attorney,
Yes, ma'am.
what's 2306? Is that your number?
You mean my desktop?
Yeah, no, I don't know, what you on this meeting through your Zoom or telephone?
I'm on through Zoom, and it's showing up as a fountain pen if you look up on your screen with
Yeah,
my.
I see, okay, I see you get. Who's 2306? 541 Cassetta.
I'll just remind you that we're still broadcasting.
Oh, it's,
Things like that, please message IT in the chat because we're still broadcasting live.
unmuted.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
did we get the treasurer?
Yes, ma'am. She's on the line.
Thank you.
She doesn't have a video or a mic beside her name. Why is it? Okay, she's on the phone. Madam Mayor.
Yes, we're working through that. And again, we're broadcasting, so please, we're working on that. We're still broadcasting.
Okay, I'm just asking.
Okay.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And
Okay, everyone, we're going to be returning back from the recess just to make sure we have everyone that is meant to be in our panel, on our panel. Sorry, we had to resume this here. Everyone is coming back from recess. Time is now 7:35. Just want to make sure we have everyone that's intended to be in our meeting. I'm just going to double check to see if everyone's mics are working and there's no technical issues. Madam Clerk, are you present? Can you able to speak now?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'm here.
Okay, perfect. Mr. Altman?
I'm here.
Okay. Ms. Gosier?
I'm here.
Thank you very much. Dr. Pelham? Okay, I can hear you, Councilor Denton. And someone has their mic unmuted right now. We can hear you ruffling through something in the background. Councilor Denton, is your microphone still working?
Mine?
Yeah, oh, got you. Councilor Randolph?
I'm not sure it matters, but I'm here.
Oh, okay. Councilor Holloway?
Yes.
Okay, Vice Mayor Bennett, I see you joined back in. Are you?
I'm here.
Okay, perfect. And Councilor Parton, just double checking to see if he's still off the line. Okay, and the number for 541-2306, whose number is that? Or can that person say something?
That's Mr. Terry.
Okay.
Oh, he can't talk.
Okay, so everyone is here. We're going to resume. I did poll council to see if they wanted the treasurer to be present. The majority said yes, she is now on the line. I do see that Councilor Denton and both Councilor Plum have their hands raised. So I'll defer to see if the city attorney, can we move forward with the treasurer, or do you think it's best for me to address council and then go back to questions right now?
Well, I made a motion. Have we done anything with that?
Yes, ma'am. I seconded your motion. Now we're in discussion. I supported you in that motion.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
Can I-
we'll move the treasurer. Yes, ma'am.
can I ask her the question that I proposed, that the information we need to know so she'll know what to speak on, or are you gonna do that?
I'm going to do that because
Okay.
yep. And I called her just to make sure she was able to do that. So Ms. Gosier, you've been asked to attend to provide council a little bit more information so we can make an informed decision regarding the ordinance that's before us this evening. As Mr. Altman stated in his opening comments, we started this conversation on the 26th of last month. And so we need to make a decision due to some upcoming deadlines that would prevent us from taking action if we don't do something in the near future. So right now, the council's questions that were posed when you were asked to join were about what has been the collection rate for real estate. And if you could give us information regarding the collection rate for lodging, sales, and meals, if possible. And then if you can provide us with some information right now, I'll go back to council for the floor so they can ask you any other questions that they may see fit in order to make an informed decision. So Ms. Gosier, do you have any information regarding our collection rates?
The processing has gone very well. It's been the best since I've been here in the 2.5 years. In that not having the window open allows the staff to focus and not make as many errors as what I've seen in the past. It makes a big deal when they're processing and having people at the window not having their bills, forgetting their checkbook, et cetera, et cetera. So by the window being closed to the public, we were able to process 3,000 payments today. To put that in perspective, 10,000 bills went out in the mail. So to be 30% processed on June 11th, is very, very promising in terms of being able to get consistent money into the bank. We took about $2.2 million to the bank yesterday. I say that publicly because it's electronic, so it's not like they could wait for us. It's money that goes from the bank to the bank, from bank to bank, electronic. When I look at the bank balance where we are today, we are $10 million higher than we were on June 11th of 2019, and we are $4 million higher than we were on the same day on June 11th of 2018. So without having the CAFR completed for 2018, I can't tell you what that means in terms of, are we safe? Are we good? Are we better? Yes, I can say we're better. $4 million more, $10 million more means that we have more money in the bank on the same day. But what that means in terms of June 30th versus extending it out to some other date in September, I'm not sure if that would be wise. I think if we go to June 30th, based on what I'm seeing and hearing from citizens, those that are struggling, I think they would get a breather, a feeling of relief that they have a couple of more weeks. We do have not as much return mail as I've seen in the past, but we do have bills that have to go back out because the place is vacant or they changed a lender and they paid a property off, and so it would give those individuals a chance to get their bills and pay them. But as far as a big shift in how much money we have to operate, I think it's important to remember that unlike in a corporation where your revenues are going for things that happen in the future, these revenues were expected to cover things that we've already spent. These funds are needed because they were levied last year. So I would caution about going too far into the future. Second thing, meals tax. I can't really see where that would be hurtful because there were many businesses that had no meals taxes because they weren't open for business. So I think they would probably benefit from an extension as they get geared up and are, more able to have business operation hours that that extension would help them. But once again, it's a trust tax. So if they served a Coke, the taxes on that Coke were due at the time that they sold it. So it's not a matter of giving them relief from anything. It was owed because it's coming from the citizen. The citizen is actually the taxpayer, not the business owner. The business owner should not be using those funds to operate. As far as the machinery and tools tax, I've seen most of the larger organizations get theirs in already. So you've got to weigh. You want to give relief, obviously, to those that need the relief, but you also don't want to discourage those that conscientiously sent their millions of dollars in the door so that we would have it in the bank before the cutoff, which we know is June 30th. So I guess I would lend to the finance director and Deborah Reason, the commissioner, on the impact of doing that type of extension. I don't have any history on doing that for machinery and tools. I wouldn't recommend it, but I would also look to their experience in government finance and accounting on what the impact would be. Keep in mind we have something called the machinery and tools rebate. So for those that pay the first and second half, we're giving them a rebate for if they're in the enterprise zones. So I think you make it more complex when you put this type of ordinance for that particular tax, for those particular organizations that are in the enterprise zone. Do they now get a refund if they pay it after September 5th? Or I just think that keep it simple would be beneficial for both the taxpayers, the citizens, and the corporations. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you much, Ms. Gossier. And also council did eliminate machinery and tools from this discussion earlier on. So that is helpful to reiterate that. You said you defer to Mr. Terry to provide any comments about any of the taxes we discussed, meals, sales, lodging, machinery, tools, and etc. Mr. Terry?
Good afternoon, everyone. I really do not have any comments, just simply because I want to stay objective. I think the treasurer will tell you that I'm a different mindset. I want all my money now and upfront now. And so whatever we can do to get that done, we should, but we also know we have issues with citizens and businesses during this point in time, so there has to be a balance. So that's where I am. Collect what we can as quickly and as aggressively as we can, and where council sees fit to give relief temporary, then I understand that that's necessary also.
Thank you very much, Mr. Terry. Now, Council, we have both the Finance Director and the City Treasurer on the line. Councilor Denton, you have your hand raised, and then Councilor Pelham.
I'm okay. I just was going to clarify my motion, but let's get through discussion.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Councilor Pelham?
Isn't this resolution ordinance is just for penalties for and late fees or something? It's not waiving any taxes coming in, is it? I'm missing something.
That's correct, Madam Counselor. It's just about the late fee penalties and interest.
Yeah, so I mean, we gonna get all the money up front. So it's just for people, well, I guess it, so they still, so in essence, are we allowing them to pay late? We allowing them to pay past June the 30th?
Yeah, there's no penalty.
Ms. Robinson, can you address Councilor Pelham's question?
Yeah, that's Counselor Randolph is right. The effect of it is for most people, when there's no penalty for late payment, they're going to opt to pay late for whatever reason. So
Right,
you're not encouraging them, but that's probably what, sort of reality, common sense dictates will happen.
Well, I would like to have permission to make a substitute motion to rescind all of this.
The only thing that's
Councilor, motion fails for lack of a second. Ms. Robinson, go ahead.
Well, the motion was seconded, I thought, by you, Mayor Gore, and this discussion was ensued after that second with the assistance of the treasurer and the finance director. And what I originally raised my hand for was to ask Councilor Pelham, rather than offering a substitute motion, would she just be inclined to vote no on the ordinance?
Yes, ma'am. I will withdraw that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Councilor Denton has her hand raised, and then also the city treasurer. Since Ms. Gosier is here to provide information, I'll call on Ms. Gosier first and then go back to Councilor Denton. Ms. Gosier?
Hello, I was muted. Hello?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My hand was raised because I was just looking at the ordinance that it did cover the sanitary, sewer, stormwater, and solid waste refuse. And I would say I have heard from several citizens about their concern of having late fees incurred during this period. So for that population, I would say that point number one, if there's any way you all could definitely lock in on that, that would make a lot of citizens happy, because in fact, there will be those that need refunds because they were charged late fees from February or March or whenever we got into this COVID-19 area.
Thank you, Ms. Gostier. And for the record, that is the motion that's on the floor. So I call on Councilor Denton. Madam Clerk, you dropped off the line. Can you please restate the motion that you have right now so we can make sure it's clear? And then I'll call on Councilor Denton to ensure that is what's intended. Ms. Brown?
I only got part of the motion before I started having technical issues. I got council to authorize and provide relief for late fees and interest. And then that's when things got scrambled for me.
Okay.
Can I restate that motion?
Yes, ma'am, please.
All right, I'll say it slow. I move to adopt the ordinance authorizing and providing relief from the imposition of late fees and penalties, interest on the utility taxes, sanitary sewer, stormwater, solid waste, refuge. Their rate shall be 0. And these utilities owing between July the 1st, 2020 and September the 30th, 2020, due to the emergency conditions resulting from COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you very much, Councilor Denton. And that is what I seconded as well. Madam Clerk, were you able to capture that?
Yes, thank you, Councilor Denton.
You're welcome.
So everyone should be clear on the motion on the floor, and we're still in discussion. Is those council members joining us with the Zoom software? Does anyone else? Okay, Councilor Randolph.
I'd like to call for the question, please.
Is there any objections to calling for the question? No, roll call, please.
Mayor Gore,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
Councilor Randolph,
Yes.
Councilor Holloway,
Yes.
Councilor Denton,
Yes.
Councilor Pelham.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And due to the conversation, the agenda for next Tuesday is already prepared. Are we tabling or excluding the rest of number 2 entirely so we can know how to plan for an upcoming meeting? Based off of what I hear, I think we're entirely removing number 2 from discussion, correct?
Yes, remove
Yeah.
number.
Okay, so we're done with this item. Okay. Thank you very much, Council. And Mr. Altman, you are tracking, right? We're done with the other item. And Ms. Robinson.
No number 2.
Yep. Moving on to the budget work session. Thank you, Ms. Gostier, for your time and jumping on the line to give us information. And thank you, Council Paul, for suggesting it. On to the work session budget. Number 1, City Council, and Councilor Denton, you have your hand raised at this time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Okay. Hang on a second.
you're fine. Mr. Altman?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Mayor. You see on the screen right now the departments that we've discussed thus far, and our remaining department is City Council. Office on Youth should be checked there. So we've got City Council to discuss this evening as the only budget remaining. And with that, I'll turn it back to Council as fortunately, I didn't have any hand in preparing Council's proposed budget for the next year.
I hope not.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Altman. Councilor Randolph?
Can you move it up a little higher? Thank you. That's good.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilor Randolph?
I have looked over this budget, and as I stated when we were on council's the clerk's budget, I talked to Ms. Arrington right after she left because she had sent all of us both of her proposed budgets. I think that we're all going to be in agreement to get rid of the travel and the lodging, the conferences, and my suggestion under meals, since some of that is for travel, is to take half of the meals down to 4,000 instead of 8. And that still gives us with 2 meetings a month for us to have $167 per council night to feed 7 of us. And usually it's closer to 10 or 11 people. But at 10 people at 167, that's still $16.70 that I think should do it just fine. Take the ward improvement money and put it in contingency just in case there's something that comes up in COVID that we as a team need to spend that money on. If we don't use it, it can go away, but that way it's available in case council needs that money to do something for anything. I am not sure, and maybe somebody else can tell me what AdCom is for that $15,000. Let me see, was that AdCom? No, it was 10,500, 10,250. I'm not sure what that is because under marketing and events, we have $20,000. But I know that several counselors use money for communications and there was no line item for communications. So I wanted to not get rid of that because I know that counselors use that money to communicate with some of their contingencies and constituents. I would suggest we get rid of the FF&E, furnitures, fixture, and equipment, and miscellaneous. And when you do that, I came up with a savings of at least $82,500 that I think we can easily take out of our budget. And we should, if we're asking everybody else to not increase their budget, I think some of the fluff that's in our budget would absolutely need to come out. Those are my suggestions or my opinion. Certainly, I'm open to anybody else's opinion as we discuss this, but that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Randolph. And to answer your question about AdCom, that is the communications line item for council. Is just one lump sum in the budget, but it is divided equally between wards. So that is that line item.
Okay.
Councilor Pelham?
Yes, I definitely agree with miscellaneous. I think everybody should get rid of all their miscellaneous personally and come back to council as needed for the entire year. At the
Absolutely.
minimum, unless everyone have at least maybe $500, but that is a sludge fund for every department in this city on the taxpayer's dollar. I don't totally agree. I agree with anything that relates to travel, excluding registration for probably registration for conferences, namely VML and NLC, because I believe they will probably be webinars or something that you can register for. So I believe that there should be some monies for conferences, just like we left it in other budgets. We also need to have that some money's there for registration. It wouldn't be that more expensive. We just don't know how. But one thing about having travel and all of that, if you don't use it, it's gonna go back into the general fund anyway. The ward grant money, I agree that we should keep it as is, and communications as well. I think that's all I have for right now.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Pelham. Ms. Robinson?
Yes, ma'am. This is just a suggestion in terms of the final preparation for the city manager, just so that we won't run into any issues under 15.22503. To the extent the council passes a budget on a line item that is to be divided between counselors and can be some degree of discretion can be applied to that line item. Would you please break it out as the ward grants are broken out in 7 different apportionments, as opposed to one that would later have to be divided out in some fashion by staff or council?
Thank you very much, Ms. Robinson. Mr. Terry, can that be done with the marketing line item, which is marketing and EVT, and then also the AdCom line item, Mr. Terry?
I'll have to get back to you on that, Mayor. My first response probably would be yes, but I want to make sure. Okay.
Okay. And I'll make a note. Okay. Counselor Denton?
Yeah, I agree that we might need to keep that AdCom, since you explained it the way you did, that is communications. But marketing and events, I suggest we do away with that entirely. That's $20,000, and I think for 1 year we can certainly go without that. And I would also like to see us cut out the management consultant of $7,000. We've had it we did it last year. I don't believe we did it the year before, so if we could do it every other year, I think that would be a good thing. So this coming year, we could do without that. So, and I agree with Councilor Randolph, the ward grant, if we could put that in the contingency fund, and it would be there if we needed it. But we could take it out if we find out COVID is not going to cost us anything, and if something comes up, we haven't really gotten rid of it. So I would say put that in a contingency fund. So I'm for taking, if you're counting it, taking out management consultant, ward grants in a contingency, take out marketing and events, and mileage. And I agree with Councilor Pelham. If there is a webinar.
Counselor Denton, you're going in and out. I last heard you when you said mileage. What was the rest of that?
Mileage, yes. I agree with Councilor Pelham that if there is a way we could do it webinar, which does not require lodging and getting their travel and all of that, we could leave some in there for that. But and the meals, cutting it in half, it sounds good. And I'm with Councilor Pelham, taking out miscellaneous. So that's where I am. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm just trying to make sure I write down these suggestions for the wraparound meeting that Mr. Altman is planning a later work session on. So I'm just making sure I capture everyone's feedback accurately. So Councilor Denton, you said to remove mileage, remove lodging, cut meals in half, remove miscellaneous, remove marketing and events, remove management consulting, and to move the ward money back to put it in contingency. Did I capture your notes? Okay.
And miscellaneous, did you get that 15,000 there?
Yeah, I got removed miscellaneous. Huh?
We're keeping communications of 10,250. I'd like to make sure we keep that, so we would be able to communicate with our board. But marketing and event comes out. Yeah.
Okay, I got that. And just before I call on other members of council, and make sure I have the other 2 notes correctly. Counselor Randolph, you said to reduce meals by half, remove miscellaneous, move the ward money to contingency.
Get rid of marketing,
Get rid of marketing.
mileage, travel.
There is no travel.
There's
no travel.
travel, public transportation. Yes, there is. Get rid of that one. Get rid of lodging. I had originally said, get rid of conferences. I agree with Ms. Pelham. If some people want to go and it's via WebEx or something like that, I think we can reduce this. And also FF&E, get rid of that.
Okay.
What's FF&E?
Furnitures, fixtures,
Okay, yeah.
etc.
And Counselor Pelham, you said remove miscellaneous. And then you said, I'm only tracking what people said to remove as a suggestion. Miscellaneous was the only one that you said to remove. And then you said to get rid of lodging, mileage, and the public transportation. So you can keep conferences and the other events for virtual. Was that correct?
Yeah, but the I guess that's right. Yeah, but the thing with communications, that's such an odd number. We need to come up with something that's kind of, I guess, equates to a couple of mailings, which would be probably 2,000. It'd be 14. I recommend communications be added to $14,000.
Okay, so you're recommending we increase communications.
Yeah, to $2,000 per ward. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So before I finish this round robin and then add my comments, because I'm saving myself for last, does any other counselor that hasn't spoken on the budget have anything to add right now on this part of the conversation? Those following, joining us with the software, I do not see any other hands raised besides Counselor Pelham, and I'll wait for that. And then to make sure we do the round of everyone first. Those joining us via phone, that's a counselor. Do you have anything to share at this time for this first round?
I agree with Councilor Randolph and Councilor Pelham and Councilor Denton in reference to the recommendation of deletion from the City Council's budget.
Okay. Thank you. There are no other comments right now. I'll just add my comments. I agree with the removal of lodging. Public transportation. I'm asking to reduce mileage but not eliminate it, because if we are to go places, that is the reimbursement for council. If we do go to attend someplace within driving distance. So I'm asking for reduction, not elimination. I support keeping conferences and conventions up there because of webinar events. And the other travel expenses has been removed, so I'm fine with that. I'm fine with removing furnitures and fixtures because we've already did the renovation. Or reducing it just in case next year, I should say reducing it just in case there is an cost that comes up, like council asked for new mailboxes. So I say reduce it, but I'm fine with eliminating it as well, but you might need to have that money available in some fashion. I oppose moving the ward money to contingency because that was created for us to be able to do events and activities for our ward as counselors. So I oppose moving that. If there is an emergency that needs to happen, that is what the contingency fund is already for. I oppose eliminating the marketing and events line item. Again, that also helps when we do activities for our residents, market, anything that you're doing, meetings or things of that nature. I support keeping the communications. I know everyone else so far has said that. Miscellaneous, I think that we need to get the information that was requested previously at another work session about what has come out of that, because that pot has been used for costs from council. So prior to eliminating it, I think we should do the same thing what the other departments have done to evaluate if that pot of money should be distributed or some portions of it be parsed out, because I think it's used for some actual operating items, but I can't say for certain what those are until we get the Munis report back that was requested by council at a previous work session. If that report does not include operational things, then I can support removing miscellaneous, but I think we need to confirm first. And if that is the case, make sure that the money is allocated in the appropriate line item. So that's my recommendations. And I also want to reiterate, since we've had discussions regarding travel before, we're eliminating the travel, so if we don't have to worry about that money being pulled and being reappropriated to other areas. But I also have 2 suggestions for council to consider, not to make a decision tonight, to mull over and discuss and at a later date when we have the wraparound meeting. The first suggestion I have for council to consider is possibly taking some of the costs that we are saving in this to look at doing something for a community grant type of an opportunity. And I brought this up last year in regards to those in our community that provide resources, whether it be financial classes, literacy support, or things that are needed. And they provide free services to help provide resources for them to be able to continue to provide those opportunities for the public. I think especially with COVID-19 and there needing to be help with tutoring, with parents being teachers right now. I understand schools are going to open back up, but it's still going to be virtual at the beginning. Also with those who are helping people with mental health or different other aspects. I know we fund outside agencies, but as we had previous conversations regarding that, there's some confusion about when to apply, how to apply, and we only do that once a year during the budget process. So if we can consider taking some of this funds that we're saving to do something for the community, for those who provide services to apply for, and council be a decision maker, I think that would be helpful to ensure that those who are doing good work in the community have some tools to keep doing that during this time. The other suggestion that I have pretty much is kind of to the point regarding bringing back resources. And I don't know how we could do this, or council is completely opposed to this, but I calculated how much funding I brought back to the city, not to my ward, but to the city overall last year. And it's a considerable amount of money. And when we had the discussion regarding travel a couple months ago, those who did not travel were trying to pull that money to reallocate to their ward and for improvement fund. But those who did travel and took education opportunities and resources back to Hopewell, even though we brought resources back, I wasn't able to invest that money back into my ward because I used it to go bring back those opportunities to Hopewell. So in the future, to consider if resources are brought back to Hopewell, can there be an incentive for that to be given to the ward as well in terms of the ward funds? I can explain this a little bit deeper offline with council members who are interested in trying to learn more. But that was mostly due to the conversation regarding travel and the ability to bank travel money and repurpose it, as opposed to for those who bring back resources don't have the opportunity. So again, I hope council will talk to me offline regarding the community grant, especially during COVID-19, but I think we're on the same page about most of these items. And Mr. Altman, do you have all the notes regarding what each counselor who spoke had regarding where they lie on the budget, so we can flesh out the differences at our wraparound work session?
Yes, I do want to, I'm looking at the two statements made by Councilor Randolph, trying to make sure that they're the same. So there's a little bit of a change. So I think you indicated during your second round of comments, you were favorable to Mrs. Pelham's suggestion to keep some money for registration for web-based conferencing, whereas in the first round of comments, you were interested in eliminating all of those funds.
That's correct, Mr. City Manager. I can compromise sometimes.
Thank you. I think I have everybody's comments, including Mrs. Pelham, regarding the discussion of human communications. And I would have just have suggested we have a number that's easily divided by 7, and
Yes,
very easily divided by 7.
The same thing would have to go for marketing too, because that's an odd number if we choose to keep that. It's a weird number. And just for the public's knowledge, the reason why they're odd numbers is because we use salary savings from the clerk's budget when we did the renovation. And we divided that up to establish these 3 pots of resources for counselors. So that's why they're odd numbers, because we were just using salary savings after the renovation and the creating of the deputy clerk position. So thank you, Councilor Pelham, for that. Councilor Randolph and then Councilor Pelham.
Yes. Your suggestions of using cost savings to do community grants would be nice. However, my whole thought process behind the budget cuts that we are and keeping the budget very tight is due to the lack of CAFRAs being up to date, not knowing how they're going to turn out, and also because of COVID impacting 2020 so severely in any income or some income that the city receives. I think that we would be best served if we want to do those grants, which I'm sure most of us on council would like to, that we wait at least until we do know that these cost savings that we're putting the departments and ourselves and outside organizations through actually are going to not be needed, and that there is leftover money to do things that we need to. That's just my opinion. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilor Pelham.
Yeah, when y'all say contingency plan, I find out you talking about the overall contingency line that we have in the budget, or originating a contingency line for city council?
I'll defer to Councilor Randolph.
I suggested that we potentially put it in a contingency for council to use. How we do that is up to all of us to decide whether we want to do that, number one, and how we would achieve that. And so it was a suggestion. I didn't have a formal plan for it all because it has to be a majority of council that would go for that.
Oh yeah, I just wanted
Yes,
to know
ma'am.
that answer. That's
Yeah.
good.
I
Thank
don't know that I have a particular answer on that, just that have it available should we need it for something that council wanted to spend it on.
Okay, thank you.
And Councilor
ma'am.
Randolph, just for clarification, you're saying not to create a contingency fund, you're saying to take our ward improvement funds, which we equally have the ability to manage per the rules that are, or the policy that was established. We have to be within the policy. You're saying to take that money and to lump it into one so that council can decide on the needs of the ward collectively.
Yeah.
At this point in time, yes, because it's either to eliminate that or have it available for something that may come up from COVID or something else. And if we don't need it for COVID, then we could reinstate it into the ward improvement. But at this point, I don't want to get rid of it just in case we have a need for it.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Okay. I'll just say for clarity, and again, we can talk offline about this more. In regards to the grant opportunities for the community, I wasn't expecting a large amount, maybe something small like 5,000 for cutting about $50,000 or $80,000 worth of money here. I have been an advocate of cutting the budget down as we started this process. The very first work session, I asked for that. But I also think that we need to be cognizant of the needs of the residents that we serve, and that we can provide resources for them at no cost by supporting those who are providing them. And I mean by no cost, I mean if someone is providing resources that would typically cost a resident to be able to receive, that might be beneficial for them during this time, if we can help supplement that person providing the services so that it will remain free, I think we should think about that. And I'm not asking for council to consider a large amount of money. I think a couple $1,000s to start off and to see if that works by December possibly, and then think about adding some more or not doing it again. But again, that could be an offline conversation with council to mull over the idea, unless people don't want to do it all together. And then for the ward improvement fund, when we have a later conversation about that, I don't support adding the ward money together, because the purpose of it was because individual counselors expressed the interest at the time to be able to provide more support as the elected officials that represent this parts of the city. And that's why we had the policy that clearly defined the guidelines to be able to use those funds. And council at times is very political, and I don't want there to be an opportunity where a ward can use a resource and it be blocked due to personal or political motives. And I just think that we should keep it the way it is, as long as everyone's following the guidelines to be able to support their ward as they see fit and to help their residents as they need it. I think that the contingency fund that the city has is already there, and it's used for emergency purposes. So should there be something that is urgent or needed that impacts a large group of residents, then certainly council as a body should come together to figure out that use of the contingency fund to support that need. But I definitely think that we should keep the ward improvement fund as is, but I know this is just a conversation. And I think this is a good work session so far. I'm glad everybody came together for the most part on most of these items. I'm very grateful for that. So we just got to flesh out the other details before we meet again and when we have the wraparound session. So thank you for that, Councilor Denton.
Yes, as most of you know, I was the proponent for the ward improvement fund. I've been trying to get that ever since I've been on council. So I am very much in favor of that. And I feel like I have used that money to benefit the citizens of our city. Most recently was to help bring the movie to the high school for the students about the uprising of the tragedy in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm using it now for historic markers. So I'm trying to do things that are good for our city. But I think for 1 year, I'm not saying I'm giving this up forever, but I'm saying for 1 year, until we get these CAFRs done, until we know what COBRA's going to end up costing us, that we put it on hold. I'm saying, I hope I'll emphasize the word, just put it on hold for 1 year. And then hopefully things will be good and we can get right back into the game. But I think right now, we just need to really tighten our belts. And I think the citizens in this town will be proud of us for trying to do this with our budget before we try to ask anybody else to cut theirs. So that's where I come from. And thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Denton. This is the last item that we have for our work session tonight. In terms of the follow-ups, Mr. Altman has the notes and he clarified with Councilor Randolph and Councilor Pelham to make sure it was accurate. I have the notes as well. So we are finished with our budget work sessions with going through everyone's department budgets. Mr. Altman should be planning an initial work session to go back through all of the pending items that we've been capturing after each work session, so that council can flush out those details and make some decisions on what to keep, what to cut, what to increase, or because there was some suggestions to increase along the way. And then we can tighten that up, and then we can move forward with Mr. Altman having the direction in order to create a new budget for us to consider and adopt. Mr. Altman, are you on the same page as me right now?
Uh, Yes, ma'am. And I would like to point out that you have information in your packet today dating back, answering questions of council dating back to your May 5th, 7th work session.
Thank you very much, Mr. Altman. Counselor Pelham?
Yes, are we going over the capital, the other things from the original budget that were given back in, I guess, April or May too? Those other tabs that's in the budgetary packet.
So we do have capital. We have a limited amount of funding this year. And as in most years, the majority of our money is occupied by the the matching money that we have for our VDOT program that Mr. Butler and Mr. Austin use to undertake road paving and other road projects in the community. So that's the majority of our funding for this year. And I'm trying to had a couple of smaller projects in the budget, but I think we only had 1.2 million available, and of that, $1 million is for the VDOT requirements. So we're kind of limited, very limited this year with regard to our flexibility with capital because of our commitments to our VDOT matching projects that we've undertaken.
Okay, another question is that with the legacy grant opportunity for local businesses, the opportunity zones cut out, I think my ward and part of Ms. Holloway's as well, maybe 7. But because of that, I would like the council to consider putting money back into the legacy grant for those businesses who were not considered for the opportunity zone. So that's a challenge for my challenge for Mr. Altman anyway, to try to come up with switch money around in that economic development that Mr. Dane manages or the capital, and put at least $20,000 to $30,000 in that legacy grant for local businesses to utilize. It's a matching grant, but it gives something back to people who pay us a lot.
Ms. Pelham, were you saying that you thought it was
One moment, Counselor Randolph. And see if she's done with the floor, because Counselor Dent has her hand up next, unless she'll yield to you.
I'm sorry, but I concede to Ms. Randolph. I'm just gonna make a motion, the meeting be adjourned.
Okay, 1 second, Counselor Palmer, are you done with the floors? Or then I call on Counselor Dent to see if she'll yield to Counselor Randolph.
She just did.
Yeah, she did.
Okay, so Counselor
just
Denton. Huh? I didn't hear Counselor Denton say that. So Counselor Denton, what did you say?
Never mind. I'll talk to Ms. Pelham.
All right, thank you.
Well, allow Ms.
Jeez.
Randolph to do it. I was just gonna make a motion to adjourn, but let her
Yes,
speak.
please, go ahead.
Now, please ask me, Debbie, Ms. Randolph.
I can talk to you offline, Ms. Pelham. It'll be easier.
All right, thanks.
I make a motion, the meeting be adjourned.
Second,
Roll call, please.
What was the motion, excuse me?
The motion was to adjourn.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Gore,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
Counselor Randolph,
oh, yes.
Counselor Holloway,
Yes.
Counselor Denton,
Yes.
Counselor Pelham.
Oh, no.
Good night.
We have
Good
another
night.
hour.
Oh, no.
Thank you. That's a
We
good
don't
one.
need to go home. 3 got another hour.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Night.